Salsa, the trusty wingman that turns a dry little tortilla chip into a force of culinary nature. You've had it in restaurants and maybe even made your own, but how much do you really know about America's #1 condiment?
The chilies have evolved quite a bit in just a short time. I mean, there's hybrids now that people make, and you can come up with different flavors. There's just so many possibilities.
For some expert tips on how to take your salsa from so-so to sabroso, we went to the owner of Los Muertos Salsa in Phoenix, Arizona, Anthony Perez. For starters, use fresh, roasted, and boiled ingredients.
The way I make my salsa, I use fresh and roasted and cooked ingredients. Pico de gallo, for instance.
Fresh, raw ingredients keep the taste and flavors up front and in your face.
That's amazing.
So,
it's bright and it's fresh. It's a delight. Do you use ever a combination of roasted with fresh with boiled or anything else?
I like to roast my chilies and, the tomatillos. It gives it that smoky flavor. It brings out a lot more flavor in your salsa.
What does the boiling do to it?
It just softens up your vegetables a little more. So like you can blend it in a blender and it's not as chunky.
And this kind of has more of that like saucy feel. This is good stuff. Oh yeah.
Next up, the equipment.
This is like the OG food processor here, molcajete. So
Okay.
you can make salsa, you can grind spices. You don't get as much of a fine grind on it, but you add everything in there, your chilies, your tomatoes, your onions, your spices. The consistency is a little thicker.
For more control over the consistency, Anthony uses either a blender or food processor.
Depending on how you add your ingredients, you can say add your tomatoes first, depending on how chunky you like it, then add your chilies later, so it's not as chopped up.
And if you toss everything in and just turn it on,
You're gonna end up with a sauce instead of a salsa.
for even more precise control of the consistency,
Most people don't have an immersion blender this big, but most people have a small immersion blender. You can use that to chop your ingredients and control it a little more with this in a blender.
finally, experiment with special ingredients.
One of my big things is I like to use balsamic vinegar in salsa.
I never would have thought of that as a salsa ingredient.
A lot of people use the little red wine or apple cider vinegar. I like the balsamic. It gives it a little richness, but it also helps preserve your salsa a little longer just because of the acidity.
He also likes to use cumin in his red salsas.
A little bit will go a long way. It gives it another different level of flavor.
And what is this ingredient?
So this is Mexican oregano. It gives it almost like a sweetness. It's a whole different taste than Italian oregano. That's the thing is spices make a huge difference on how you make your salsa.
We're making your salsa sensational.